السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته ومرحبا بكم جميعا. نحن الآن وصلنا إلى الدرس والعشرين. So we're now on lesson 28 and as normal I will read through the dialogue and then discuss the rules that we benefit from this lesson بإذن الله تعالى. So I'll start from here. إبراهيم: ماذا تفعلين يا بنتي؟ أكوي الثياب التي غسلناها أمس. أكويت القميص الأبيض؟ نعم كويته. والقميص الأخضر؟ لا لم أكويه بعد، سأكويه الآن إن شاء الله. والمناديل أكويتها؟ أمي كوتها في الصباح. أتريدين أن تقولي لي شيئا؟ نعم، إن زميلتي سلوى دعتني إلى بيتها هذا المساء، فأرجو أن تسمح لي بالذهاب إلى بيتها بعد صلاة العصر. اذهبي وارجعي بعد صلاة المغرب. يا أبا محمد، تعال هنا وانظر، إن محمدا يجري على السلم، أخشى أن يقع. لا تجري يا محمد، تعال هنا. ما هذا بيمينك؟ أرني. ارمي هذا تراب. يدخل محمود. السلام عليكم. وعليكم السلام. جئت اليوم متأخرا يا محمود. فما السبب؟ شكوت اليوم أحد زملائي إلى المدير، فطلبنا إلى مكتبه للتحقيق. لما شكوته؟ لأنه دائما يأخذ كتبي ودفاتري ويتوي أوراقها. ما هذه الحلاوة التي معك؟ أهدية هذه أم اشتريتها؟ ما هذه الحلاوة التي معك؟ أهدية هذه أم اشتريتها؟ اشتريتها لأنني أريد أن أدعو 3 من زملائي إلى بيتنا غدا. أدعوهم لتناول العشاء بعد غد. سيكون عمك موسى أيضا معنا إن شاء الله. So just to highlight some of these points that we are benefiting from this lesson. As you can see, over the past few lessons we've been discussing the various types of weak verbs. Now this is also one of the last types of the weak verb, and that is the verb that ends in a final weak letter. So akwi being one of them, from kawa yakwi. Okay, lam akwihi, as you can see, the final weak letter, when we add lam, which makes a verb take sukun, the final weak letter is deleted. Da'atni, from da'a yad'u. دعا يدعو. أرجو, رجا يرجو. These are all from the final weak verbs. جرى يجري. خشي يخشى. رمى يرمي. ارمي, the command verb. Also أرى يري. أرني is the command verb of أرى يري. شكا يشكو. شكوت. طوى يطوي, to fold. اشترى يشتري. اشتريتها. For these are examples of the final weak verb. And as you see when we go through the rest of the exercises, we will see clearly the different types of final weak verbs. Again, as always, just make sure you know the vocab. You go over the vocab list of each lesson and you constantly read it just to consolidate those words and to become familiar with them. Don't make memorizing a task, as I always tell you. Just constantly read through them and you become accustomed and well acquainted with them bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So now we go to the next pages and start going through these exercises to understand the concept of the final weak verb. So the final weak verb we have a number of examples. I'll just write some examples quick for you here. For example, we have masha, which becomes yamshi. Yamshi. We have, for example, da'a, which becomes yad'u. We have nasiya, which is to forget, becomes yansa. Okay, so those are examples of the three types of final week. One that becomes ya, one that becomes waw, one that becomes alif. Yani masha yamshi, da'a yad'u, nasiya yansa. So those are the kind of verbs that we'll be going through during this lesson, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So as normal, ajib anil as'ilat al-atiya, answer the following questions. You answer these questions based on the information that was in the dialogue. Then we have the main point. هذه أمثلة للفعل المعتل اللام. So these are examples for the verb that is weak with the lam letter, the lam of the fa'ala. So that means the final letter of the verb is weak. Now there are three types, but here it's mentioned alif and ba. So it's only going to mention two types for now. Then within this lesson, it will mention a third type. So here it says alif, kawa yakwi, masha yamshi, jara yajri, rama yarmi, baka yabki. So all of these ones in alif, the example of them is that they become ya in the fi'l mudari', in the present tense. Then we have ba, da'a yad'u, shaka yashku, tala yatlu, maha yamhu, afa ya'fu. So these ones become dhamma, wow, as you can see in the present tense. The final weak letter, the alif, becomes wow. So here it mentions now تأمل الأمثلة ثم اكتب المضارع المرفوع والمضارع المجزوم والأمر من الأفعال الآتية. So it says ponder over the following examples, then write the مضارع with المرفوع. So that is the present tense that would normally end in ضمة. يعني مرفوع is ضمة or is equivalent. And المضارع المجزوم, when it's مجزوم, which is سكون or it's equivalent. The verb ends in sukun or it's equivalent because of like lam and the likes. والأمر من الأفعال الآتية, and the command. So if we look at this, baka yabki, أصله يبكي. So as we know, المرفوع يعني ينتهي بالضمة. الأصل في المرفوع, the asl of a word that is marfu', the verb is ends in dhamma, and then you have that which is a representative of dhamma. So here, yabki is a final weak verb, so it doesn't take dhamma. Yabkiyu, this is too heavy to say. So you say yabki. So this is the sign of it being marfu'. But then it says lam yabki. With lam, we know it's a jazim. It makes the verb take sukun. The fi'l mudari' takes sukun. And it's negation that benefits negating of the past. So yabki, what have we done here? We deleted this ya. The ya is deleted. The final weak letter gets deleted as a sign of jazm, yani a sign of sukun. And the same thing with the command, al-amr, yani ibki. So following this pattern, masha yamshi, lam yamshi, imshi. Kawa yakwi, lam yakwi, ikwi. So for your task, your homework is to complete this table with the following verbs. Jara, rama, bana, saqa. And make sure you learn what they mean. So here is in the brackets, it's بين القوسين, between the two brackets. تحذف لام الفعل المعتل اللام في المضارع المجزوم وفي الأمر. So it says the final weak letter is deleted in the present tense that is majzoom, i.e. this column here that takes sukun, or it's equivalent because of lam or something else that makes it take sukun, and in the amr, and in the command verb. So the sign of it being majzoom, the sign of sukun with the final weak verb, is that you delete the final weak letter. And it says اقرأ ما يلي, and you read the following examples. So again, you read these, you write them, you translate them. So bana Ibrahimu alayhi salam al-Ka'bata. So the verb, the shahid here is bana. Bana yabni, which means to build. So here you're going to see the final weak verb in use in different sentences for you to ponder over them, ponder over the meaning, observing the rules that we've covered so far. Just now we're just applying those rules with a different type of verb, and that is the final weak verb. the verb that ends in either alif, like yansa, or waw, like yad'u, or ya, like yamshi. And we will continue to see them as we go through the rest of the exercises and how to conjugate them also, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So as you can see, in continuing, you have the about 16 sentences for you to read and pay attention to the usage of this final weak verb. Now it's moving on to تعمل المثال ثم اكتب المضارع المرفوع المضارع المجزوم والأمر من الأفعال الآتية. So again, as we did in the last page for يعني مشى يمشي and those verbs that become ya, the final weak letter becomes ya in the مضارع. These verbs become wow. So you have دعا يدعو أصله يدعو. لكن كما ترون, as you can see, this is very heavy to say. So we say لا, you don't say يدعو, we say يدعو. Okay, and then when we add the lam, which makes the verb majzoom, I take sukun or its equivalent, we say lam yad'u, we delete this wow, the extra weak letter. And the same thing for the command verb udu'u, udu'u. So that's something to bear in mind and pay attention to, the usage of the final weak verb. And you have iqra ma yali, examples, again sentences to read with the usage of the final weak verb that is on the pattern. For example, da'a yad'u, that becomes wow in the final week. Okay, so that's important to pay attention to. They say the asl of this verb, when you look for it in the dictionary, you'll find da'awa, da'awa, but we say da'a. And how we know this, because the masdar as well, the verbal noun is da'watun, like this, da'watun. So you can see the wow comes back. Okay, so again, all of these verbs, shaka, tala, maha, they follow the same pattern. So you need to fill in this table with the conjugation of the verb in the present tense in mudari', al-majzoom, wal-marfu'. Yani marfu' is the original form before anything happens to it, like before you add lan, which makes it mansub, or lam, which makes it majzoom. When you add lan, for example, you say lan yad'uwa, because lan makes the mudari' mansub. So here the verb can take the fatha, so we do bring it. But as for majzoom, when we add lam, then you delete that wow. The wow is deleted, the weak letter, lam yad'u. So the sign of sukoon for the mudari' is deleting of the weak letter. And as I mentioned, you have in السادس, تمرين السادس, the sixth exercise, اقرأ ما يلي, يعني a number of sentences to go through to see this in use, inshallah. So we go to the next page and see what else is to be observed from the usage of the final weak verb. So here السابع says أسند الأفعال الآتية إلى الغائبة ثم المتكلم كما هو موضح في المثال. So they basically want you to conjugate the verb by adding it to the pronoun. For one, the غائبة, the third person feminine singular, yani for hiya, and then also for ana. So here it says حامد بكى, آمنة بكت. When we have the ta at-ta'nith as-sakina, when we add the ta for feminine here, we get rid of the weak letter also. Why? Because there's two sukoons in a row. Say Hamidun Rama, Aminatu Ramat. Again, you delete this alif maqsura. And then when we add the ta for ana, yani ta al-fa'il, say ana bakaytu. So it'd be ana ramaytu. Okay, so these verbs all will follow the same pattern. Rama, ata, jara, kawa. Then we have da'a. And as you can remember, this verb becomes wow, da'a yad'u. So we have Aminatu da'at, ana da'awtu. The wow, it comes back. The wow comes back. So the same would apply for the following verbs: shaka, raja, tala, maha. They follow the same pattern. I think you can also observe the ones that become wow, they all have alif mamduda, the standing alif. The standing alif. Okay. And here's a point. It says bakat أصله bakat حذفت الألف بسبب الالتقاء الساكنين. So the original way to say is bakat, ولكن the alif has been deleted, حذفت, deleted, بسبب, because of التقاء الساكنين, two sukoons meeting each other in a row. We can't have two sukoons in a row in the Arabic language. Okay. So now it says أجب عن الأسئلة الآتية بالنفي مستعملا لم. Answer the following questions in negation using lam. So here it says abaka at-tiflu, yani did the boy cry? So when you're answering, you're gonna say lam. First you can say la to negate it, la. Lam, which is your negation of the verb, yabki. Okay, originally it should be yabki. Okay, but when we have the lam, as we mentioned, when we have the lam of negation, it makes the verb majzoom. The sign of majzoom for the final week verb is deleting the final week letter. So bear that in mind when answering the next 8 questions, as I've done the first one for you. Then it says أدخل لا الناهية على الفعل الذي بين القوسين أمام كل جملة ثم أكمل به الجملة. So again, it wants you to use لا الناهية, and that is the prohibition. لا الناهية, this لا also makes the verb majzoom, and you take sukoon or its equivalent. Here, the equivalent of sukoon is what? Deleting the weak letter. So if we pay attention to the first one, it says, for example, teshku, that's the verb in brackets, teshku. So it says, ni, that means I'm going to be the object of the verb, ilal mudiri ya ustad. So I need to use la and na here, the la of prohibition. So for the first one, I'm going to do it up here. It says la tash. It should be tash ni. That's what it should be originally, okay? But this la and na here, it makes the verb majzoom. And as I mentioned, the sign of it being majzoom is deleting the final weak letter. So it's lam, la tashkuni. Don't complain about me. Ila al-mudiri, to the head teacher, ya ustad. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to apply the same rule of la and nahiya to the following 7 sentences to complete the sentence using la and nahiya, the la of prohibition that makes the verb majzoom. I take sukoon or the equivalent, deleting the final weak letter for final weak verbs. As I showed you in this example, la tashkuni, you're going to apply the same thing for the following sentences. Make sure you understand the sentences also when you complete them. Now, going to the last form of the final weak verb is تأمل ما يلي نسي ينسى خشي يخشى بقي يبقى لم ينسى لم يخشى لم يبقى انسى اخشى ابقى. Now, as we learnt the 2 previous forms of that which becomes ya, يعني مشى يمشي, and that which becomes واو, دعا يدعو. Now we have the one that stays as alif, يعني نسي ينسى. Okay, with fatha and alif maqsura. The alif maqsura is the ya that has no dots. So here, this is the final form of the final weak verb, as there's 3 variations. The one that becomes ya, masha yamshi, with kasra. The one that becomes waw with dhamma, da'a yad'u. And the one that becomes fatha with alif maqsura, nasiya yansa, khashiya yakhsha. So again, the same things that we've applied in the exercises for each type, we will do the same in the coming pages for this type of verb. So now we have iqra ma yali as the general, the normal method of study is that we have sentences to illustrate the usage of the new concept we have just learned. So all of these sentences are going to be using that verb that is on the pattern of baqiya, yabqa, nasiya, yansa, that becomes alif maqsura in the present tense. Okay, but then it says isnadu masha ila dhamair. Here they're going to show you how to conjugate the verb. How to conjugate the verb in the past tense. Okay, the verb conjugation in the past tense of masha. So every verb that's also on this pattern will follow the same conjugation. So Hamidun masha, al-awladu mashaw, it stays as fatha. You don't say mashu, you say mashaw. The asl is mashayu, but that's difficult, so you say mashaw. Aminatu mashat, al-banatu mashayna. So that alif becomes ya when you attach the pronoun to it. Mashayta, mashaytum, antum, anti, mashayti, antunna, mashaytunna, ana, mashaytu, nahnu, mashayna. So any verb that is on the pattern of masha, yamshi, okay, like jara, yajri, will follow the same pattern when you conjugate it in the past tense. And the same thing would apply in the present tense. So here's isnadu yamshi ila dama'ir. So yamshi conjugated with the different pronouns. So you have Hamidun yamshi, al-awladu yamshuna, Aminatu tamshi, al-banatu yamshina, anta tamshi, antum tamshuna, anti tamshina. Okay, antunna tamshina. So if we look for at the final weak verb in this section, anti and antunna are the same. You will know the difference, like who is being spoken about in context when you're using it. But the conjugation for them is both the same, because it's a final weak verb with that takes ya. So anti tamshina, antunna tamshina. It's the same for anti and antunna. Okay. Then we have isnadu fi'l al-amr min masha ila dama'ir. This is the example of the command verb conjugated. So imshi, imshi ya Hamid, imshu ya awladu, so plural. Imshi ya Aminatu, imshina ya banatu. So it will be ijri, ijru, ijri, ijrina for the verb jara yajri. Okay. Now we have isnadu nasiya ila dama'ir. So the verb nasiya in the past tense, this is the conjugation of it. You are to observe it and apply the same conjugation to the following verbs. So you can even rewrite it. For example, if I just write some examples for you, baqiya and khashiya, you can practice with these verbs also, because the same rules would apply. So as we had masha yamshi, you're going to have jara yajri also to practice your own conjugation of these verbs. Then we have the present tense of yansa ila dama'ir. So as you can see, hamidun yansa, al-awladu yansawna. Okay. Antum tansawna, anta tansa, aminatu tansa, al-banatu yansayna. And we'll see it continued on the last page. So again, as you can see, anti tansayna and antunna tansayna, again the same. Okay, ana ansa, nahnu nansa. And then the command verb, insa, insaw, insay, insayna. So all of the verbs on this pattern will have the same ruling. Okay. Then we have da'a, the one that becomes waw, da'a yad'u. So this is the conjugation in the past tense. And then we have in the present tense. The main things that we observe are in the present tense. And what we will notice now, in the present tense, there is something different. So antunna is tad'una. Antum is tad'una. So they are the same. Antunna and antum is the same. Okay. As well as hunna and hum. They are the same. But as for anti will be different. Tada'ina. It's not going to be the same as antunna. That's in the final weak verb with waw. With waw. The ones that are, the pronouns that share the same conjugation. In the present tense is hum plus hunna. And antum plus antunna, as you can see in the example. So to practice, you're going to practice this with shaka and tala, for example. Okay, they're on the same pattern of that verb. And then again, observe the إسناد الفعل الأمر من دعا إلى الضمائر. So how we conjugate the command verb of this form: أدعو, أدعو, أدعي, أدعونا. So shaka, tala would follow the same pattern as da'a. In this exercise, it was, if you're in a classroom with your teacher, it will be like arini, which means show me. يقول المدرس لكل طالب من الطلاب يا فلان أرني كذا. So أرني means show me. Okay, it's a command verb from the verb أرى, not رأى. أرى, which means to show. يري, this is a form 4 verb. أرى يري. So أرني is the command verb. أرني. Okay, so أرني هذا القلم, show me this pen, for example. This is how we use this verb. أرى, يري, أري. أري is to show. أرني, show me. If you're speaking to a woman, أريني, show me. If you're speaking to a group of men, أروني. Okay. أروني. And if you're speaking to a group of women, أرينا. أرينا, like this. Okay. And then you have al-kalimat al-jadidatu, your new words that you would have learnt within this lesson. Again, refer back to the vocab bank to make sure you're up to date with your words. You practice using a dictionary to find these words like al-hanzwir or al-mawrid, and get used to finding words and finding the usages, their meanings. Sometimes that one word has more than one meaning, and you'll see examples of how to use them within the dictionaries also. So let's bear that in mind, and practice conjugating the verbs with the pronouns for verbs that are on the same pattern. For verbs that are on the same pattern as each of the 3 variations that we mentioned for the final week verb. And just to repeat them, we have those that are with kasra and ya, like masha yamshi, jara yajri. Okay. Then we have those which we have fatha and alif maksura, like nasiya yansa, baqiya yabqa. Then we'll have those that become waw with dhamma. So da'a yad'u, afa ya'fu, tala yatlu, shaka yashku. Again, so apply the conjugation with attaching the pronouns to each of these ones, just to get familiar with it and practice it, insha'Allah ta'ala. So go over the lesson again, write out the verbs, the conjugation, and take the same pattern, the verbs on the same pattern, and practice your own ones to just consolidate the new rules that we have learnt regarding these types of verbs. So I'll see you next lesson. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.